Could you imagine living in a world where there's over 60 Pokemon to play as in a 5v5 MOBA, and they decide that a reasonable buff is a negligible difference in special defense? Yeah, me neither, but they did it anyway. What is up, ghouls, gamers, and goblins? I'm the PotatoBagel, and I think Machamp sucks. I actually like Machamp, it was my go-to since day one, and to see it at such a low point is upsetting to me. To be honest, Machamp has been on a slow decline for a while, and I think ever since Buzzwole came out, Machamp hasn't really been relevant. They both serve a similar role, and I think Buzzwole just does it better. So I'm taking it into my own hands to try and give Machamp some of the love it needs. What I'll be doing is going through every part of Machamp's kit and seeing how it can be buffed in some way. I'm not expecting all of my ideas to be cohesive with each other, I'm simply analyzing each part of the kit as its own separate piece. I'd also like to admit here that I'm not the best at any sort of macro or micro management in MOBA. I'm more of a Pokemon fan than a MOBA fan. So when I throw, some numbers out, it's just completely subjective. I'm starting off with its basics and passive because they're an integral part of every build. To be completely honest, I've never seen Guts make a difference. For those that don't know or need a reminder, Guts is Machamp's passive ability. It increases your attack for a few seconds when you become affected by some debuff. This can be a status condition or stat drop, it doesn't matter. There's also no cooldown either, which means that it can keep proccing as long as an enemy triggers it. Again, I've never felt Guts make a difference when fighting. I don't know if it's because it just flat out sucks or because of the rest of Machamp's kit doesn't benefit all that well from it. If it sucks, then I propose an increase in attack from it while shortening the effect. This way, it can make a difference while still trying to promote perpetual fighting. On top of that, I'd like a visual indicator for it. Yes, it has an icon in the corner, but that's not what I mean. Without looking for the icon, sometimes I have no idea Guts even activates, and that's because there's no visual indicator for it. You get an attack buff that isn't displayed aside from an icon that you may or may not even notice. Personally, I think it'd be cool if Machamp's fist glowed either blue to contrast with the orange buffs its other moves give it, or black, like Ryu from Streets. If I were to ask you what Machamp's most notable feature is, 80% of you would probably say it's 4 arms. So if it has 4 arms, why is its basic attack combo 3 hits? Like really, there is a missed opportunity here for something cool. Let Machoke be the basis for this. Whatever timing it has for its 3-hit combo, let's say 1 second just for the easy math here, Machop, the pre-evolution, should have a 2-hit basic attack combo that is also 1 second. Then, Machamp's can be a 4-hit combo in that same amount of time, with the last hit of course always being the boosted. I know there's a lot of funky math involved with attack speed, and there's a tiering system too, but essentially as it evolves, Machamp gets an extra hit in its attack chain and the attack speed to compensate for it, so it doesn't add extra time to the full combo. As for the boosted effect, it's fine, it's extra damage and a speed decrease on the opponent, that's perfect. Now, when I think of Machamp, especially in Unite, I think of it as the baseline. It has good offense, good defense, and its builds reflect that. Machamp doesn't have good sustain and mobility like some of the other all-rounders. It doesn't brawl well like Sizzle or zip around like Serena. Its lifesteal isn't great like Buzzwole or Cerulege, so to have an impact on fight, Machamp needs to rely on its move utility. Dynamic Punch and Close Combat have decent brawling potential, but without good sustain, it's lackluster. So I'm hoping this build is sort of like a halfway step between Sizzler's Bullet Punch and Dark Urshifu's Wicked Blow. This combo should occur often enough where the damage feels significant, but should not occur all at once. Dynamic Punch does have a stun to it, but it's only enough to guarantee safety of using Close Combat. Speaking of, Close Combat grants you Unstoppable, but that only prevents crowd control, so I think that when using Close Combat, Machamp needs a buff to its defenses, or to be given a small shield. It also needs increases to its damage, but specifically on the attack ratio part. Because Close Combat is just flat damage as opposed to playing for crits with Cross Chop, it should scale better with an attack weight, and although it does compared to Cross Chop, I think it needs a slight increase. As for Dynamic Punch, even with all these effects, it doesn't feel impactful, so here's my suggestion. I think the downtime of Dynamic Punch is appropriate, I believe it's 3 seconds. What that means is that it takes 3 seconds after those stat buffs were off for Dynamic Punch to be up and ready again. I think that timing is fair. What I don't like is that the whole cycle takes 8 seconds. For reference, Close Combat, its ideal pairing, has a cooldown of 6 seconds. To create a bit more cohesion with the combo, I think the full cooldown should be 6.5 seconds. Leave the stuns as half a second and nerf the slows a little bit to about 2.5 seconds. Then to maintain the 3-second downtime, the attack buff lasts for 3.5 seconds, which allows it to sync up with the gradual decrease of the move speed that Dynamic Punch naturally provides. Even if the changes to its basic attack were to also be implemented with this, those 3 seconds of downtime are a big moment of weakness from a champ that can easily be capitalized on, which is kind of the point. It's enough timing for something like Chandelure to get off 2 flamethrowers if it hits it right, or Slowbro to hit you with telekinesis. Overall, I just think the active cycle of this build should be a lot more frequent. Alternatively, you could just quarterback your way through everything and run Submission and Cross Chop, which would probably be the better build if Submission didn't suck. I have no quarrel with Cross Chop. It dashes, it crits, and it builds its own stacks with Cross Chop Plus to compensate for its naturally lower attack scaling. It's 10 out of 10, it's a perfect move, it's fine. Submission, on the other hand, is a bit awkward. It's decent CC, but the problem actually lies in getting the CC to go off. I think to help this move, a new engine flag needs to be created, similar to what they did with Muscle Band and basic attacks a while back. The biggest downside to Submission is that the move is announced, essentially. Anybody can see it coming. This gives enemies enough time to react accordingly, giving them the opportunity to negate the grab and throw of Submission, canceling the move. To help this, I propose that upon cancellation of the move, half of its cooldown is returned. Submission has a cooldown of 9 seconds, and this would grant 4.5 seconds back. Similar things occur with Charizard's Unite move, and that gives 90% of it back. I think this is fair and reasonable, especially given that Submission is, one of your just regular moves, and that's what gets used most often. Outside of getting the grab to function, I still think Submission needs some change. I like the 5-second buff it gives you with, the grab being the follow-up. But the actual animation for the grab takes way too long, and the grab itself, well, I guess more of a throw, doesn't really go anywhere. So compared to Buzzwole's superpower, it's just inferior. To fix this, I'm changing Submission to Vital Throw. With Vital Throw, you get those buffs for 5 seconds entering the grabby state, and then you use a basic attack to throw an opponent. The animation for this grab should be a little faster, meaning it's not as big of a deal if you whiff it, and they're thrown some distance behind you where they take damage and get stunned. If the enemy hits a wall, whether it be the maps or Mr. Mimes, the damage and stun is increased. After throwing an opponent, you would then get the attack and crit buffs as normal. How far are they thrown, you might ask? Far enough where you can follow through with the cross chop, but if you're using close combat, you might have to move a little bit closer. The point of this build is still be crit based and plays that way. Cross chop as it stands is fine, but with the now Vital Throw, the point is to throw enemies away from objectives or into your teammates. With the initial speed buff you get, you're meant to chase down your opponents, and with Vital Throw you can make up the distance by tossing a foe backwards to your teammates. Okay, but seriously, imagine doing this to the Indeedee that spawns by your team's tier 2 towers, running up and grabbing a Indeedee and slamming that bitch into the wall. Then you get to do that to your opponents. Seems pretty fun to me. The last major thing in Machamp's kit is its Unite move. I'm not changing this too much, it's one of the best in the game, and I'd be an idiot to touch it. That being said, my only gripe with it is that not too many opponents tend to be affected by the shove. So to compensate, I wish the forward momentum was turned down a little so that opponents that aren't shoved are at least being hit for a little bit longer. As an all-rounder, Machamp has access to a couple other stat bonuses, these being a natural critical hit rate and some lifesteal. The lifesteal is only applied to its basic attacks, and I'm hoping those earlier changes to the basic attacks will allow its 20% lifesteal to shine a little bit better. Crit rate, on the other hand, is kind of what I want to tweak a bit. The only moves in the kit that can crit are the basic attacks and cross chop, which is weird because Karate Chop, its starting move, is also a naturally high crit rate move, at least in the mainline games. Maybe it is effective and Unite DB is wrong about this, but that is most likely not the case. They do a good job of handling their information pretty well. So in the good chance that Karate Chop can't inherently crit, I think Machamp should start with a 5% crit rate. At level 5, it increases to 10%, 15% at 7, 20% at 9. Oh, and speaking of level 7, please make Machoke evolve into Machamp at level 7. Serena's at 6, Aegislash is at 7, Charizard is at 7, and if you're bad at Magikarp, Gyarados is at 7. Garchomp and Tyranitar are pseudo-legendaries and should evolve at 9. That just makes sense. Just put Machamp on the same scaling as everybody else, please. And with all that, that's Machamp wrapped up. I don't expect everybody to agree on these ideas, but I do hope they make sense. I know I complained about Submission and the Unite move a little bit. I do hope those are valid complaints, but it might also just be a skill issue on my end. Machamp was my go-to since day one, but with Pokemon like Decidueye, Chandelure, and Dodrio having been added, plus Machamp falling off, I strayed from playing it but too much compared to some of my other favorites. That being said, my goal was really to make Machamp feel like a team player. It can get in, do what it needs to do, and give the teammates big moments too. Sometimes all you need is a stun from Dynamic Punch, other times you may need to yeet something with Vital Throw. Either way, there's plenty of ways to help the team. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and most importantly, stay frothy.